When I give a talk, I'm trying to elucidate by any means I can find what life is about for me and what it might be for someone else, as opposed to our illusions about it. It's a very difficult thing to talk about. I never give a Dharma talk that I don't hate, because it's never possible to tell the exact truth. I always tend to go a little too far this way or a little too far that way, or I use the wrong words and somebody gets mixed up. But again, that's part of our training. Dharma talks are not necessarily something to understand. If they shake you up and confuse you, sometimes that's just right. For example, we can say that everybody in the universe at this particular moment is doing the best that he or she can. And then the word best creates trouble. It's the same difficulty we have with the sentence, everything, just as it is perfection. Perfect? Doing their best? You mean when someone's doing something horrible, they're doing their best. Just through our use of words, we get awfully mixed up in our life and in our practice. In fact, our whole life is confused because we mix up our concepts, which are themselves absolutely necessary, with reality. So Dharma talks tend to challenge our usual concepts. And using words in a certain way adds lots of confusion, and that's just fine. Today, I want to add to the confusion. I'm going to tell a little story and then head off in some other directions and see what we make of all that. At this center, we don't talk much about the precepts or the Eightfold Path for a very good reason. People misinterpret the precepts as being prohibitions, thou shalt nots. And that's not what they are at all. Nevertheless, my talk today is about the precept, do not be angry. I won't mention it again, but that's what the talk is about, do not be angry. Suppose we are out on a lake and it's a bit foggy, not too foggy, but a bit foggy, and we're rowing along in our little boat having a good time. And then, all of a sudden, coming out of the fog, there's this other rowboat and it's heading right at us. And crash. Well, for a second we're really angry. What is that fool doing? I just painted my boat. And here he comes, crash, right into it. And then suddenly we notice that the rowboat is empty. What happens to our anger? Well, the anger collapses. I'll just have to paint my boat again, that's all. But if that rowboat that hit ours had another person in it, how would we react? You know what would happen. Now our encounters with life, with other people, with events, are like being bumped by an empty rowboat. But we don't experience life that way. We experience it as though there are people in that other rowboat and we're really getting clobbered by them. What am I talking about when I say that all of life is an encounter, a collision with an empty rowboat? What's that all about? Let's leave that question for a moment. People often ask, what do I get out of practice? What is the change? What is the transformation? Zen practice is very hard work. It's restrictive and difficult. We're told we have to sit every day. What do we get out of this? People usually think, I'm going to improve. I'm going to get better. If I lose my temper easily, maybe after sitting I won't lose it so easily. Or, to be truthful, I'm not so kind, maybe through sitting I'll get to be a very kind person. And this isn't quite right. So I want to tell you a few little incidents to clarify this a bit. I want to talk about the dishpan at our house where I live with Elizabeth. Now, since I'm retired from work, I am home most of the day. After I rinse the sink, I like to set the dishpan in there like a dish, so if there's a spare cup during the day, I can conceal it in the dishpan. Since that's the way I want the dishpan, it's obviously the right way, right? But when Elizabeth does the dishes, she rinses the dishpan and turns it over so it can dry. At noon, I have the house to myself. But at 5 o'clock, I know she's coming home. So I think, well, am I a man or a mouse? What am I going to do about the dishpan? Am I going to put it the way Elizabeth wants it? So what do? Actually, I usually forget the whole thing and put it any old way. And then there's another thing about Elizabeth. I live with her and she's wonderful, but there couldn't be two people who are more unlike. The joy of my life is to find the one item in the closet that I can throw out. It's great. Elizabeth has 3 of everything and doesn't want to throw anything out. So it means that when I want to find something, I can't find it because I've thrown it out, and when she wants to find something, she can't find it because she's got so much stuff she can't find it. One more example and then we'll get to the point of all this. I'll tell you what it's like if I go to the movies with my daughter. Mom, you know your taste in movies is just impossible. And I say, well, you're not remembering the one we went to that you wanted to see. What about that? So, squabble, 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 and we end up going to a movie which may be whatever it is. What is the point of all those stories? Basically, I could care less about the dishpan. But we do not lose all our particular little neurotic quirks from practice. Neither my daughter nor I really cares about the movie, but these little squabbling interchanges are what life is all about. That's just the fun of it. Do you understand? We don't have to analyze it, pick it apart, or communicate about it. The wonder of living with anything is, what? It's perfect in being as it is. Now you may say that's all very well with things on this level, which are of course fairly trivial. What about serious problems such as grief and anguish? What I'm saying is that they're not different. If someone close to you dies, then the wonder of life is just being that grief itself, being what you are. And being with it in the way that you're with it, which is your way, not my way. Practice is in just being willing to be with it as it is. Even willing, that word is not quite right either. Most of life, as we see it in the stories I told, is hilarious. That's all you can say about it. But we do not view it as hilarious. We think that the other person should be different. They should be the way I think they should be. When we come to what we call crisis points in our life, it's not fun. I'm not saying that, but it still is as it is. It is still the perfection. Now I want to take one more point. I think maturing practice is the ability to be with life and just be in it as it is. That doesn't mean that you don't have all your little considerations, all your stuff going on about it. You will. That's not the point. But it is held differently. And all of practice is to move what I call the cutoff point so that we can hold more and more in this way. At first we can hold only certain things that way. Maybe in 6 months of practice you hold this much that way. Maybe in a year this, 10 years this, and so on. But there's always that cutoff point at which you can't hold it. And we all have that point. As long as we live, we're going to have that point. As our practice becomes more sophisticated, we begin to sense our tremendous deficiencies, our tremendous cruelty. We see the things in life we're not willing to take care of, the things we can't let be, the things we hate, the things we just can't stand. And if we've been practicing a long time, there's grief in that. But what we fail to see is the area which with practice grows, the area in which we can have compassion for life just because it is as it is. Just the wonder of Elizabeth being Elizabeth. It's not that she should possibly be different, she is perfect in being as she is. And myself. And you. Everybody. That area grows, but always there's that point where we can't possibly see the perfection, and that's the point where our practice is. If you've been sitting a short time, it's here, that's fine. Why should it be anyplace else? And then over a lifetime, that cutoff point just moves and it never ceases to occur. There's always that point. And that's what we're doing here. Sitting as we sit, just letting what comes up in ourselves come up, be there, and die. Come up, be there, and die. But when we get to the cutoff point, we're not going to remember any of that. Because it's tough when we're at this point. Practice is not easy. The little stuff in life doesn't bother me particularly. I enjoy all this little stuff that goes on. It's fun.